Jackson, welcoming dancers from Sumba. One of the reasons we want to tell the story of how people get married in Sumba is because it is so different. It's a world where family is everything. Marriage is all about two families who negotiate the marriage with very great care. It may take several years to do this, so it's not for the impatient. But marriage is not so much an event as a process. Young love is important. We do have our young Romeos and Juliets, but so is family. And the Montagues and all the Capulets also have to have their say. Our particular tale of young love of Romeo Rangudeta and Giulietta Bobajoro is set on the south coast of West Sumba, just south of Waikahuba. The main thing that happens in preparing for a marriage is that the two parties, the boy's family over here, on my left, who come from Wanakaka, you have got to mount a procession travelling across the countryside to meet with your counterparts, the bride's family from Lamboya. So here, ladies and gentlemen, is Giulietta Bobajoro. And where is our Romeo? Now look, this is a village world, not a town where you can hold big receptions and there are big churches. This is a village world. The village is spread out across the hills and the valleys. Bodawitu in Wanakaka is the home of our handsome young man, Romeo Rangudeta, with his family. A very peaceful place in the fertile Wanakaka Valley, but as you can see, some distance away from the neighbours. Giulietta Bobajoro comes from Sodan, a big village in Lamboya. Equally, looks like it's in the middle of a wilderness, doesn't it? Happily, this young couple, have met in the weekly market at Pudediwatu. When Tuti and I were doing this, during Tuti's field work, if we were going to visit on one of these visits across the countryside, we have to walk, and you have to take large animals with you as gifts. So you, the Wanakaka family, if you go to visit, you're going to have to take horses or buffalo. And so you march along the roads with your animals, beating gongs as you do. When the bride's family comes to pay a return visit, they would also come by walking uphill and down dale, carrying a large pig and flying one of these cloths as a flag above. But fortunately these days, you'll notice there's a road winding its way across the rice fields. And it is possible to take a truck most of the way, although you then dismount and enter the village in proper style. Now this is a buffalo dressed up for his public appearance. The buffalo is going to be the principal form of gift the groom's family makes to the bride's family. A buffalo is a magnificent animal, and if it travels with proper dignity, accompanied by gong music. And you can see the gong ensemble getting ready for the road. These are their instruments. You heard a bit of them before, but coming back the other way, bringing a pig, the rules are that you don't beat the gongs, but you have to have music, so you sing. So you make up a special song for the occasion as you travel across the countryside, making a special point of going very close to the village or villages where your friends and relatives, so that it can hear you passing and singing as you go. And then you arrive at a Sumbanese village, which looks like this. Sometimes with people busy doing one thing or another when there's some kind of festivities. And of course when a marriage procession arrives, it's going to be a little group like this. You can see the boys are dancing on their way. So you arrive and you sit on the front veranda of these houses. For marriage negotiation, participants will be spread out over several houses because you've got a large group. It's come all the way from Bodawitu and Wanakaka, and you've arrived at the village of Sodani in Lamboya. Now these negotiations, we'll have two negotiators representing the families. Hugh from North Carlton is on duty today representing Indonesian Valley, so you can go and sit down. And representing the boys' side. Now, You're in for a serious discussion here. They're very heavy-duty stuff. This is a very formal and respectful business. I mean, if you think of, we're trying to maintain the peace between two big, proud families, just like the Capulets and Montagues who are feuding, and we're trying to prevent that kind of disaster happening. These are formal negotiations, really rather like the diplomatic talks between two countries. So that's why you have expert go-betweens, not for amateurs.
I happened to go to Tutti and David's wedding before he was born.
One of the main purposes of these experts is to make sure that if the Somalis actually like a little bit of drama. They don't believe in everything proceeding in peaceful. They're always making complications. The girls often have to speak fairly firmly to their families and say, look, you family had better get your act together because I'm going to marry this guy. Not many about like him. He's my choice. You better get your act together and do the right thing in the negotiations, otherwise I'll just run away. You always have to make sure that unwise, undiplomatic words spoken in the background. A special diplomatic language is used. For instance, what on earth would ducks in the pond have to do with things? But typically one of these things starts out with this phrase, what is in the bellies of the ducks in the pond? What lies behind the overhanging branches on the riverbank? Now this is a very elegant way of saying, what's the real intention of your visit? They know, of course. It's a little haiku poem that expresses all of the complex things that are going on when you're having negotiations like this. Because the ducks people didn't get dressed and go up all of this trouble just to enjoy having a visit. Serious matters are at hand, and you just see ducks look as if they're playing on the water. Well, not at all. If you see them there, it's telling you a lot about what season of the year migrations is happening in, what kind of food there is at the bottom. Even the riverbank can be a place of hazard. It can be very slippery and there can be crocodiles lurking. So things can go disastrously wrong and things can end up like, as in Shakespeare's story of Romeo and Juliet. So we're here to make sure this doesn't happen by speaking in this very elegant form of poetry. This is the answer to the question, what is in the bellies of the ducks on Christo here will reply, give me water, give me rice, I say to you. Very simple words, conjuring the image of a woman faithfully nurturing her children and her husband. And so when a man asks a woman to become his wife, he's actually asking for something so vast and enormous in its implications, stretching into future generations, far beyond the immediate things that Romeo and Juliet may have had in mind, and it's essential to the continuation of the extended families as well. All of this complexity that's involved in negotiating a marriage, how is it possible to put this into words? Well, this is how the Sumba do it. Give me water, give me rice. And so it goes on for some hours, days. But it's not just the Sumbanese who do this poetry of marriage. It gives a nice rhyme, a nice ring to it if you put it in couplets. So we're familiar with the English version of this, in sickness and health, in good times and bad, in joy and sorrow. I promise to cherish and respect you, to care and protect you, to comfort and encourage you, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, until death do us part. Now the Sumbanese actually do all of that too. The Sumbanese actually believe, although they put an enormous amount of effort into creating these beautiful images, these wonderful words, they also say, words mean nothing, it's all just empty talk. You have to do it with symbols. So gifts must be given of valuable, extensive, valuable objects to symbolise the serious meaning of what's going on. So Wanakaka has sent, on their very first visit, it's very simple, they simply bring a horse. And it's actually a small group that comes. It's not very public, the first visit, because they want to avoid embarrassment if things go wrong. In this case, Lamboya agreed that a marriage should be undertaken. since Julieta has put the hard word on them beforehand to make sure that they do. So just so that as a symbol, everyone will know that the deal is on, the negotiator representing Wanakaka hands over the... not like that actually, the details are important. Give them back, give them back. Because this is calmly, thoughtfully loaded with meaning. So you present this on the, put it out on it, in the middle, offer it to him. He thinks about it seriously for a while, says a few more lines of poetry, and only then does he accept it and hand it back. So you take the knife and hand back the, and now you present your counter gift.
Look at it, make sure.
You can look at it, make sure that it's a real thing. It really is very old, and preferably it has the handle has to be made of ivory. One of the key items that will be handed over later on is the mamuli. The boy's family is going to make offerings consisting of all of the things that men are involved in managing and manufacturing. So you have buffalo and horses that the men care for, and things made of iron and of gold, because it's men that work those things. Whereas from the girl's family, it's pigs and rice are supplied, two key items of food, but also cloth that women weave. And women, of course, are the ones who raise the pigs. Just like the poetry, the symbolic language of these decorations is very, very elaborate as well. Ivory is the other thing which is handed over from bride's family to the groom's family. Most spectacularly, of course, on the final day when the bride will proceed from the village she was born and grown up in to the village where she's going to spend the rest of her life. Now you'll notice that in all of this, no churches, no big reception hall. It's all done, the dynamic is entirely between these two families. I've just got a few pictures here of what happens when the bride arrives in her new home. This is not actually into the house that she's going to live in. This is the ancestral house. And she's just received that bag, personal metal bag of the lady of the house. She's got her husband coming along behind her. And he's guiding her as he hands over another pair of clocks, one male clock and one female clock, handed over to the man of the house. He then takes them across to this shelf high up under the roof of the living space, which is the place where the ancestors hang out if they've come to see how their great-grandchildren are getting on. And this is actually just one of many complicated offerings that are being made across from one family to the other. But even the ancestors are involved. Once that's happened, from that time, you've told the ancestors that the new bride has arrived, she's one of us now. She takes her place amongst the children and extended family on the other side. Everybody will be very kind and look after her, especially in the first few weeks. All looking forward with some enthusiasm to see how soon she gets down to the business of raising children, which is one of the things that all of this is about.
My name's Hobjen. I'm actually from Warragul, Gippsland, and this is my husband, Umumana. He's from the village of Prelude in East Sumba. We were married last year, in October last year. We've been married for just 1 year now. And yeah, I guess we went through a slightly different set of negotiations to what we've been through today, because every village has slight differences in the way they do things. And I thought it was interesting the way David suggested that everything is done with a lot of care, because sometimes between villages they have different ways of doing things. So you can do everything properly through your own village ways, but if you get to someone else who thinks that things should be done slightly differently, that can sort of cause upsets. So we had 3 stages to our wedding. The first stage was when Mum and Dad had just arrived. And Rende village is actually about 60 kilometres east of Prelude. But the Prelude village is in the town of Wengapu. It's a traditional village, but the town has grown around. My adopted family have a house that they call their garden house. Normally you would have a garden house near where you have your rice fields, but this is sort of a house in town near relative convenience. For two reasons we did the negotiations between Prelude and the garden house Verende. Firstly, obviously because it was a bit easier, just the location being in town. But secondly, and possibly more importantly, because if we were to go into the big village of Rende, then that has to include everybody in the village. And while our parents care greatly for us, our uncles and second uncles twice removed probably care more about the number of horses and buffalo involved than our parents do. So once you start to involve a larger group of people, you start to talk about needing more belis or more bride price, and it becomes a more complicated process. So they start to talk about the horses and buffalo, and they start to decide how many the final total of horses and buffalo will be. When they're discussing it, what they actually bring is the mamuli and kanata. So the mamuli is the female symbol and the kanata is the male symbol. And they bring that and they're discussing these items, but they all know that if they've got one of the mamuli and one of the kanata, that there's a horse out there somewhere. So what they're actually discussing is the horse. Like, what's in the back of their mind is the horse, but what they're talking about is the mamuli and the kanata. And when they bring one of those, in return, the bride's family will give a piece of cloth and a sarong and a hindi, so a male and a female piece of cloth. And when they finish the negotiations, they sacrifice a pig and then eat it together. And if you've eaten some of the pig, that means that you agree. So the second step, so that was the first step is the Masuk Winter, the second step is Purongandi, and that was a week after the first thing. Purongandi is much the same as the first negotiation, but the idea of the Purongandi, if you bring enough livestock and everybody's happy with the situation, then you take the bride home to the village. And so at 2 a.m. we finished the first part of that, and then we had to sleep on it because you can't take a bride home in the middle of the night because that's basically, it's suggesting to everyone else that you're stealing the bride. So this was about 6:30 a.m. the next morning. So everyone sort of has reached a kind of point of real joy, but also relief and tiredness and that kind of point where it's really easy to laugh at everything and everyone's happy and joyous, and we were walking home in the sunshine. And everybody was singing. When we got back to Prelude to Uman's village, they killed another pig to welcome us home. And we sat and everyone ate pig and then eventually sort of gradually dispersed. The last stage, which wouldn't have happened traditionally, but the common way of doing things in Sumba now, is to then have a church wedding and a big reception. Our wedding reception was about 3,000 people. It was an amazing and very busy time and something that I think we're still reflecting on now.
All right. Look, we might end with a little dance of celebration now.